Good afternoon, everybody. I'm horning in on Josh's time just for a hot second. As we learned last week, America's economy added 215,000 jobs in March. That means that our businesses extended the longest streak of private sector job creation on record. 73 straight months, 14.4 million new jobs, unemployment about half of what it was 6 years ago. This progress is due directly to the grit and determination and hard work and the fundamental optimism of the American people. As I travel around the country, what always stands out is the fact that the overwhelming majority of folks work hard and they play by the rules, and they deserve to see their hard work rewarded. They also deserve to know that big corporations aren't playing by a different set of rules. That the wealthiest among us aren't able to game the system. That's why I've been pushing for years to eliminate some of the injustices in our tax system. So I am very pleased that the Treasury Department has taken new action to prevent more corporations from taking advantage of one of the most insidious tax loopholes out there and fleeing the country just to get out of paying their taxes. This got some attention in the business press yesterday, but I wanted to make sure that we highlighted the importance of Treasury's action and why it did what it did. This directly goes at what's called corporate inversions. They are not new. Simply put, in layman's terms, it's when big corporations acquire small companies and then change their address to another country on paper in order to get out of paying their fair share of taxes here at home. As a practical matter, they keep most of their actual business here in the United States because they benefit from American infrastructure and technology and rule of law. They benefit from our research and our development and our patents. They benefit from American workers who are best in the world, but they effectively renounce their citizenship. They declare that they're based somewhere else, thereby getting all the rewards of being an American company without fulfilling the responsibilities to pay their taxes the way everybody else is supposed to pay them. When companies exploit loopholes like this, it makes it harder to invest in the things that are going to keep America's economy going strong for future generations. It sticks the rest of us with the tab, and it makes hardworking Americans feel like the deck is stacked against them. So this is something that I've been pushing for a long time. Since I became president, we've made our tax code fair, and we've taken steps to make sure our tax laws are actually enforced, including leading efforts to crack down on offshore evasion. I will say that it gets tougher sometimes when the IRS is starved for resources and squeezed by the congressional appropriation process so that there are not enough people to actually pay attention to what all the lawyers and accountants are doing all the time. But we have continued to emphasize the importance of basic tax enforcement. In the news over the last couple of days, we've had another reminder in this big dump of data coming out of Panama that tax avoidance is a big global problem. It's not unique to other countries because, frankly, there are folks here in America who are taking advantage of the same stuff. A lot of it's legal, but that's exactly the problem. It's not that they're breaking the laws, it's that the laws are so poorly designed that they allow people, if they've got enough lawyers and enough accountants, to wiggle out of responsibilities that ordinary citizens are having to abide by. Here in the United States, there are loopholes that only wealthy individuals and powerful corporations have access to. They have access to offshore accounts, and they are gaming the system. Middle-class families are not in the same position to do this. In fact, a lot of these loopholes come at the expense of middle-class families because that lost revenue has to be made up somewhere. Alternatively, it means that we're not investing as much as we should in schools, in making college more affordable, in putting people back to work, rebuilding our roads, our bridges, our infrastructure, creating more opportunities for our children. So this is important stuff. And these new actions by the Treasury Department build on steps that we've already taken to make the system fairer, but I want to be clear. While the Treasury Department actions will make it more difficult and less lucrative for companies to exploit this particular corporate inversions loophole. Only Congress can close it for good. And only Congress can make sure that all the other loopholes that are being taken advantage of are closed. I've often said the best way to end this kind of irresponsible behavior is with tax reform that lowers the corporate tax rate, closes wasteful loopholes, simplifies the tax code for everybody. And in recent years, I've put forward plans repeatedly that would make our tax system more competitive for all businesses, including small businesses. So far, Republicans in Congress have yet to act. My hope is that they start getting serious about it. When politicians perpetuate a system that favors the wealthy at the expense of the middle class, it's not surprising that people feel like they can't get ahead. It's not surprising that oftentimes it may produce a politics that is directed at that frustration. Rather than doubling down on policies that let a few big corporations or the wealthiest among us play by their own rules, we should keep building an economy where everybody has a fair shot and everybody plays by the same rules. Rather than protect wasteful tax loopholes for the few at the top, we should be investing more in things like education and job creation and job training that we know grow the economy for everybody. And rather than lock in tax breaks for millionaires or make it harder to actually enforce existing laws, let's give tax breaks to help working families pay for child care or for college. And let's stop rewarding companies that are shipping jobs overseas and profit overseas and start rewarding companies that create jobs right here at home and are good corporate citizens. That's how we're going to build America together. That's how we battled back from this great recession. That's the story of these past 7 years. That can be the story for the next several decades if we make the right decisions right now. And so I hope this topic ends up being introduced into the broader political debate that we're going to be having leading up to election season. Okay? And with that, I turn it over to Mr. Josh Earnest.
A question about the Panama Papers, Mr. President?
Yeah.
Given the release of these millions of pages of financial information, are you concerned that that reflects on the ability of the Treasury Department to sort of be able to see all the financial transactions across the globe? They clearly didn't see these. And whether that suggests that the sanctions regime that you've put in place in a bunch of places around the world might not be as strong as you think it is?
Well, we know the sanctions regime is strong because Iran wouldn't have, for example, cut a deal to end their nuclear program in the absence of strong sanctions enforcement. But there is no doubt that the problem of global tax avoidance generally is a huge problem. It's been brought up in G7 meetings. It's been brought up in G20 meetings. There has been some progress made in coordinating between tax authorities in different countries so that we can make sure that we're catching some of the most egregious examples. But as I said before, one of the big problems that we have, Michael, is that a lot of this stuff is legal, not illegal. And unless the United States and other countries lead by example in closing some of these loopholes and provisions, then in many cases you can trace what's taking place, but you can't stop it. There's always going to be some illicit movement of funds around the world, but we shouldn't make it easy. We shouldn't make it legal to engage in transactions just to avoid taxes. And that's why I think it is important that the Treasury acted on something that's different from what happened in Panama. The corporate inversions issue is a financial transaction that is brokered among major Fortune 500 companies to avoid paying taxes. But the basic principle of us making sure that everybody's paying their fair share and that we don't just have a few people who are able to take advantage of tax provisions, that's something that we really have to pay attention to, because as I said, this is all net outflows of money that could be spent on the pressing needs here in the United States. And the volume that you start seeing when you combine legal tax avoidance with illicit tax avoidance or some of the activities that we're seeing. This is not just billions of dollars. It's not even just hundreds of billions of dollars. Estimates are this may be trillions of dollars worldwide, and it could make a big difference in terms of what we can do here. I'm going to take one more question, and then I'm going to turn it over to Josh. One last one. Go ahead.
Mr. President, the Republican frontrunner today outlined his plan to pay for
it's,
a wall on the border, which includes barring undocumented immigrants in the U.S. from sending money back home. What would be the real implication of this plan, and are his foreign policy proposals already doing damage to U.S. relations abroad?
The answer to the latter question is yes. I think that I've been very clear earlier that I am getting questions constantly from foreign leaders about some of the wackier suggestions that are being made. I do have to emphasize that it's not just Mr. Trump's proposals. I mean, you're also hearing concerns about Mr. Cruz's proposals, which in some ways are just as draconian when it comes to immigration, for example. The implications with respect to ending remittances, many of which, by the way, are from legal immigrants and from individuals who are sending money back to their families, are enormous. First of all, they're impractical. We just talked about the difficulties of trying to enforce huge outflows of capital. The notion that we're going to track every Western Union bit of money that's being sent to Mexico, good luck with that. Then we've got the issue of the implications for the Mexican economy, which in turn, if it's collapsing, actually sends more immigrants north because they can't find jobs back in Mexico. But this is just one more example of something that is not thought through and is primarily put forward for political consumption. As I've tried to emphasize throughout, we've got serious problems here. We've got big issues around the world. People expect the President of the United States and the elected officials in this country to treat these problems seriously, to put forward policies that have been examined, analyzed, are effective, where unintended consequences are taken into account. They don't expect half-baked notions coming out of the White House. We can't afford that. All right? Turn it over to Josh. Thank you, guys. Now, I care deeply about, there are a whole range of progressive causes that I will continue to fight for as long as I have a breath. I believe in a society that is doing something about climate change in an aggressive way. I believe in a society in which every child is able to get a decent education and opportunity. I believe that everybody should have health care in a society this wealthy. It's not a privilege. It's a right. I believe that our criminal justice system is flawed in a whole range of ways. A couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was last week, I had lunch with a sampling of the people that I've pardoned for nonviolent drug offenses. And I've got a woman sitting next to me who, at a very young age, in her early 20s, was sentenced to life in prison for a nonviolent drug offense. It's crazy. It makes no sense. It was unjust and counterproductive, and leaves huge scars not just in that woman's family and her children, but in our society as a whole. So there are a whole bunch of things I've done as president, and I intend to continue to do and to advocate for. Those are not things, though, that typically a Supreme Court justice is in a position to get done. They don't have taxing power. They don't necessarily have the expertise to be designing programs to get at the things that we care about. And so I do have a modesty in terms of my expectations for what the court should do. But I want the court to do what it should do really well. I want a court that does believe that equality under the law is equality under the law, not just the words, but that it is operationalized, that it's real. I want a court that is treating a poor, indigent criminal defendant the same as a wealthy criminal defendant. And the justice is blind with respect to, she agrees with me. So modesty in the scope and the nature of what the law is, but doing really well what the court is designed to do. That's what I'm looking for in a justice. You don't need this little clip art over here, so let's take that out. Incredible dancer. I don't know if people are going to believe you.
I see.
You sure you want to do that?
Yeah, set me up.
All right. The first time I saw the White House was in 1984. I just graduated from college. I was working as a community organizer out of the Harlem campus of the City Colleges in New York. You got to have your elbow in a little bit. Okay. All right. Release. Make sure it's on your fingertips.
Maybe I should shoot lefty.
You can try that.
I got one shot at this. Oh, yeah.
Oh, man.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's what I'm talking about. That's science right there. I'm really proud of you, man. That's a wonderful volcano.
Thank you, man.
You don't need all the time in the world or all the answers to be the mentor someone needs. And you don't need to be an NBA star or the President of the United States to be someone's hero.
Support my brother's keeper.
Be a mentor.
Make the time. Go to mentor.gov and mentor in real life.
Hey! Good to see you. All right, everybody have a seat, have a seat. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the White House. There are a lot of good things about being president. You know, I get a chance to travel all across the country and meet people and see all the amazing things that are being done. Being Commander-in-Chief of the greatest military the world's ever known and seeing the incredible service of our men and women in uniform. Air Force One. It's very cool. I don't have to take off my shoes before I get on an airplane. But some of the best moments that I've had as president have involved science and our annual science fair. I mean, I have shot a marshmallow out of a cannon directly under Lincoln's portrait. I've learned about prototypes from 6-year-old Girl Scouts who built a page-turning machine out of Legos for people who might be disabled. There they are. Good to see you guys. I should add, by the way, that I took a picture with them with one of their tiaras on, which I think is still floating around the internet. Most importantly, I've just been able to see the unbelievable ingenuity and passion and curiosity and brain power of America's next generation and all the cool things that they do. I've also, by the way, had a chance to see an alarming number of robots. None have caused me any harm up until now. They've startled me a little bit. I understand today that we have a live chicken here, which I'm sure the White House staff is thrilled about. But this is fun. More importantly, it speaks to what makes America the greatest country on earth. I want to publicly thank some of the people who helped make today possible. Also because I want you to know who to blame if something explodes. We've got some members of Congress in the House who've been highly supportive of all our science and basic research efforts. We've got my science advisor, John Holdren, who is here. Give John a big round of applause. We've got my Chief Technology Officer, Megan Smith, in the House. We have some guests who are really helping to lift up the importance of science, like This is not a typical combination. Supermodel and supercoder. Carly Kloss is here. We've got actress and science enthusiast Yara Shahidi. There she is. Good to see you. We've got XKCD comic creator Randall Monroe is here. Give him a big round of applause. We're joined by some of the past participants of our science fairs, including Elena Simone, who studied her own cancer and started coming up with some cures. I remember meeting you last year. How's Harvard going? So far, so good. She was a senior last year, just started. So this is an eclectic and diverse bunch. But what they all share is this love of science and love of technology and a belief that our youngest innovators can change the world. And there's nothing that makes me more hopeful about the future than seeing young people like the ones who are here, and they come from all over the country. They come in all shapes and sizes. All of you are showing the rest of us that it's never too early in life to make a difference. You teach us about the power of reason and logic and trying things and figuring out whether they work, and if they don't, learning from that and trying something new. And you remind us that together, through science, we can tackle some of the biggest challenges that we face. Whether you're fighting cancer or combating climate change, feeding the world, writing code that leads to social change, you are sharing in this essential spirit of discovery that America's built on. John Holdren helpfully reminded me that today happens to be the 273rd birthday of Thomas Jefferson. And Thomas Jefferson was obviously a pretty good writer. The Declaration of Independence turned out pretty well. He was a great political thinker and a great president, but he was also a scientist. And that was true of most of our founders. They were children of the Enlightenment. They had come of age when all the old dogmas were being challenged, and they had this incredible faith, this belief in the human mind and our ability to figure stuff out. And whether it is Benjamin Franklin or Thomas Jefferson or all the others who were involved in the founding of our country, one of the essential elements that is embedded in our Constitution and the design of this democracy is this belief that the power of the human brain, when applied to the world around us, can do amazing, remarkable things. And it also requires, as we're seeing from these outstanding teams, not just constant inquiry, but also strong teamwork and dogged perseverance. And by following the trail of your curiosity wherever it takes you, you are continually adding to this body of knowledge that helps make us a more secure, more prosperous, and more hopeful society. Science has always been the hallmark of American progress. It's the key to our economic success. I can't think of a more exciting time for American science than right now, because we are busy reigniting that spirit of innovation to meet so many challenges. Just to give you a couple examples, we're on the cusp of a new era of medicine that accounts for people's individual genes. And I've been doing a lot of work with Francis Collins, the head of NIH, around how we take the human genome that we've mapped, in part thanks to the good work of Francis and others, so that we are able to not just cure diseases generally, but figure out what exactly do you in your particular body need in order to keep it running well. We're harnessing technology to develop cleaner sources of energy and save our planet in the process. We're unraveling the mysteries of the human brain unlocking secrets of the universe. In fact, just last month, Commander Scott Kelly returned from an almost year-long stay on the International Space Station. Some of you may have read about that. He conducted countless experiments, and he also served as an experiment himself. His identical twin brother, Mark, who is an astronaut as well, Mark stayed home during this entire time that Scott was up in the air, and that meant that NASA could study the two of them side by side to gain insights into how long-term occupation in space changes your body and your operating systems. It turned out initially it makes you 2 inches taller. But I saw Mark just 2 weekends ago. Apparently, you shrink back really quickly. It makes your head bigger too, but I don't know how big. America's also got a selfie-taking rover that's Instagramming from Mars. The International Space Station just got its first inflatable habitat for astronauts. SpaceX, and on the commercial private venture side of space, just landed a returning rocket on a drone ship in the middle of the ocean. And that's opening up the possibility of reusing our rockets instead of just throwing them away once they've launched. So the progress we're seeing across the board is extraordinary, and it's just the beginning. The rest is going to be up to you, the next generation. Somewhere in your generation, maybe in this room, are pioneers who are going to be the first to set their foot on Mars. The first humans, anyway. I don't know about other life forms. And I know what you're capable of because I just had a chance to see some of the exhibits, and we had some of the press pool follow. If you were not blown away from some of the young people that we just had a chance to meet, then you had too big of a lunch and you were falling asleep, because if you were paying attention, it was unbelievable. We've got Maya Varma, who's a senior from San Jose, California. Where's Maya? Yay, there's Maya. Maya's using a low-cost microcontroller, software freely available on the internet, and a smartphone, and she designed a tool that allows people with asthma and other lung diseases to diagnose and monitor their own symptoms. So her goal was to use smartphone technology to make diagnostic tests for all kinds of diseases a lot cheaper. My aspiration is not only to create the next big thing in my field one day, Maya says, but also to make it accessible to more than a privileged few in the world. So give Maya a big round of applause. I do have to say, this is just an aside. The only problem with the science fair is it makes me feel a little inadequate. Because I think back to my high school, and first of all, I didn't have a field. Maya talked about her field. My field, I don't know exactly what my field of study was at that time, but it wasn't that. We also have 9-year-old Jacob Leggett from Baltimore. Where's Jacob? There you go in the bow tie. So Jacob loved programming ever since the age of 2, when he nearly wiped clean his grandma's computer, which I'm sure she was thrilled with, but don't worry, Jacob fixed it. Last summer, this young maker wrote to a company that manufactures 3D printers, asked him if he could have one of the 3D printers in exchange for feedback on whether their printers are kid-friendly. So clearly he's a good negotiator and business person. And today, Jacob is churning out toys and games for himself and his little sister, and he dreams one day of making artificial organs for people. I should add, by the way, Jacob, John, had a very good idea, which is that we should have, in addition to our PCAST, which is my science advisory group, all these scientists and leaders in various fields, we should have a kids advisory group that starts explaining to us what's interesting to them and what's working and could help us shape advances in STEM education. Anyway, that was Jacob's idea. So, way to go, Jacob. We're going to follow up on that. Give Jacob a round of applause. We have 16-year-old Anirudh Ganeshan. Where's Anirudh? There he is, right there. So, when Anirudh was little, his grandparents walked him 10 miles to a remote clinic in his native India for vaccinations, only to find out that the vaccines had spoiled in the heat. Though he eventually got the shots that he needed, he thought, well, this is a problem, and wanted to prevent other children from facing the same risk. So he developed what he calls the VaxWagon, and it's a refrigerator on wheels that transports vaccines to remote destinations. That's the kind of innovation and compassion that we're seeing from so many of these young people. So give Anirudh a big round of applause. And we have Olivia Hennessy, a high school senior from Greenwich, Connecticut. Where is Olivia? There she is. Hi, Olivia. And now, think about this. So Olivia swept the Google Science Fair. She read about the Ebola epidemic in the news. She decides, I want to make a faster, less expensive test for the disease. As opposed to a lot of adults who were just thinking, how do I avoid getting Ebola? She decides, well, I'm going to fix this. So she wants a faster, less expensive test. An old test cost $1,000, took up to 12 hours to conduct. Using silk as a base instead, Olivia made the test cost $5 without requiring refrigeration, with results that are available in under 30 minutes. How about, what were you doing in high school? Give Olivia a big round of applause. So this is just a small sample of the incredible talent that is on display at this science fair. And we couldn't be prouder. To all the students, to all the young people, we could not be prouder of you. I want to thank the parents and the teachers and mentors who stood behind these young people, encouraged them to pursue their dreams. I asked all the young people who I had a chance to meet, how did you get interested in this? And there were a couple whose parents were in the sciences, but for the majority of them, there was a teacher, a mentor, a program, something that just got them hooked. And it's a reminder that science is not something that is out of reach. It's not just for the few, it's for the many, as long as it's something that we're weaving into our curriculum and it's something that we're valuing as a society. And so I hope that every company and every college and every community and every parent and every teacher joins us in encouraging this next generation of students to actively engage and pursue science and push the boundaries of what's possible. We've got to give all of our young people the tools that they need to explore and discover and to dig their hands in stuff and experiment and invent and uncover something new and try things and see hypotheses or experiments fail and then learn how to extract some knowledge from things that didn't work as well as things that worked. That's another theme that came out of a lot of the conversations I had with young people. And that's why we're building on our efforts to bring hands-on computer science learning, for example, to all students. As I've said before, in the new economy, computer science isn't optional, it's a basic skill along with the 3 R's. So we're issuing new guidance to school districts for how they can better support computer science education. Oracle will invest in getting 125,000 more students into computer science classes. Give Oracle a big round of applause for that. We appreciate that. We've got more than 500 schools that are committing to expand access to computer science, and this is just a sample of the things that we've been putting together over the last several years to try to expand opportunity for the kind of brilliant work that's being done by these students. And we're seeing entire states take action. For example, last month, Rhode Island got on a path to bring computer science to every school within 2 years. So we're going to build on this progress. We want to make sure every single one of our students, no matter where they're from, what income their parents bring in, regardless of their backgrounds. We want to make sure that they've got access to hands-on science, technology, engineering, and math education that's going to set them up for success and keep our nation competitive in the 21st century. That includes, by the way, working through some of the structural biases that exist in science. Some of them a lot of them are unconscious, but the fact is that we've got to get more of our young women and minorities into science and technology, engineering and math, and computer science. I've been really pleased to see the number of young women who've gotten more and more involved in our science fairs over the course of these last several years. And as I said to a group that I had a chance to meet with outside, we're not going to succeed if we got half the team on the bench, especially when it's the smarter half of the team. Our diversity is a strength, and we've got to leverage all of our talent in order to make ourselves as creative and solve as many problems as we can. And one of the things I find so inspiring about these young thinkers and makers is that they look at all these seemingly intractable problems as something that we can solve. There's a confidence when you are pursuing science. They don't consider age a barrier. They don't think, well, that's just the way things are. They're not afraid to try things and ask tough questions. And above all, what we've seen today is that they feel an obligation to use their gifts to do something not just for themselves, but for other people as well. You know, Olivia said after she was working on this Ebola diagnostic tool, my generation's been raised with an awareness that we're part of a global community. It's everybody's responsibility to take a proactive approach and think of solutions. She is right. I want you to call up Congress and tell them your thinking on that. That was just a joke. Maybe not. But it's all up to us to work together with our youngest talent leading the way. You know, a century ago, Albert Einstein predicted the existence of gravitational waves. This year, a team of scientists finally proved him right. This was very cool, by the way. I don't know if those of you guys who had a chance to read about this. The way they measured it was the building got a little longer. The building from which they were measuring this gravitational wave grew like a little bit. And then it kind of shrank back, which is really weird and really interesting. And that's the thing about science. You don't always cross the finish line yourself. You may have a hypothesis, a theory, and then people build off of it. And it's like you're running a race and you're passing a baton. Everything that we're working with today is based on some young person like you 10 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 or 300 years ago, who were asking themselves the same question. And while even Einstein didn't see all the fruits of his labor, because he went as far as his curiosity and hard work would take him, generations of scientists continue to build on his progress. So that's what we're going to need from all of you. We are counting on all of you to help build a brighter future and for you to use your talents to help your communities and your country and the world. We will be with you every step of the way, and I will be keenly following your progress so that when you invent some cancer cure or find some new source of cheap, clean energy, I will take some of the credit. I'll say, if it hadn't been for the White House Science Fair, who knows what might have happened. Even though it won't really be my credit to take. So I'm just teasing, guys. Thank you very much, everybody. Proud of you. Good job. Good evening, everybody. As President and Commander-in-Chief, my top priority, above all else, is the security of the United States and the safety of the American people. And that means preventing terrorist attacks and At the moment, it is focused on making sure that we are dismantling and destroying the ISIL network. I just met with my National Security Council as part of our regular effort to review and constantly intensify our campaign against ISIL. And I want to thank Director Brennan and everybody here at the Central Intelligence Agency for hosting us and for their critical contributions to this fight. In late February, at our meeting at the State Department, I directed my team to continue accelerating this campaign on all fronts, and we have. This remains a difficult fight and a complex one, involving many countries and different communities in Syria and in Iraq. It is a military campaign and a counterterrorism effort, but it also depends on a whole range of political issues that face these two countries. As we've seen so tragically, from Brussels to Istanbul to Iraq, where ISIL slaughtered children watching soccer, these depraved terrorists still have the ability to inflict horrific violence on the innocent, to the revulsion of the entire world. With attacks like these, ISIL hopes to weaken our collective resolve. And once again, they have failed. Their barbarism only stiffens our unity and determination to wipe this vile terrorist organization off the face of the earth. Today, on the ground in Syria and in Iraq, ISIL is on the defensive. Our 66-member coalition, including Arab partners, is on the offensive. We have momentum, and we intend to keep that momentum. Our air campaign, more than 11,500 strikes so far, continues to pound ISIL targets. It's harder than ever for them to move and for their masses to, mass forces. When they try, we take them out. ISIL still has managed to advance in some areas of Syria and Iraq, but it has not had a single successful major offensive operation on the ground there since last summer. So it's been nearly a year since they were able to. We continue to take out their leaders, their commanders, and those plotting terrorist attacks. For ISIL's leadership, it has been a bad few months. Coalition forces captured Abu Dawood, a leader of its chemical weapons program, giving us critical information that's allowed us to unleash more strikes against those sites. We have removed Abu Sarah, ISIL financier in Iraq, Haji Iman, their finance chief, Izzat al-Jabouri, an ISIL figure in northern Iraq, not to mention a number of top foreign terrorist fighters. They are off the field. And in the days and weeks ahead, we intend to take out more. Every day, ISIL leaders wake up and understand that it could be their last. With coalition support, local forces continue to push ISIL back in Iraq. In Anbar province, Iraqi forces have consolidated their gains around Ramadi and pushed up the Euphrates River Valley, liberating several villages from ISIL and retaking parts of the town of Heat. In a recent offensive in the Tigris River Valley, Iraqi forces have pushed towards Mosul. And as Secretary Kerry made clear in his visit to Baghdad last week, we will continue to assist Iraq, and so must the entire world, as it works to stabilize liberated areas and promote governance and development that is inclusive of all Iraqi communities so that ISIL cannot return. Meanwhile, in Syria, a coalition of local forces, some backed by U.S. Special Operations Forces, continue to make progress, pushing ISIL out of the strategic town of al-Shadidi. ISIL was dug in there, and that battle was expected to last several weeks. Instead, ISIL was defeated in several days. With this, we've severed a critical supply line between ISIL strongholds of Raqqa in Syria and Mosul in Iraq, tightening the squeeze on ISIL in both areas. In this offensive alone, these local forces in Syria have pushed ISIL out of about 2,800 square miles. In the north, fighting continues as local forces fight to eject ISIL from its last pocket along the border with Turkey. In other words, the ISIL core in Syria and Iraq continues to shrink. The ranks of fighters are estimated to be at the lowest levels in about 2 years, and more of them are realizing that their cause is lost. Our cyber operations are disrupting their command and control and communications. We continue to target ISIL's financial infrastructure, including its oil wells, refineries, and supply lines. We've reduced their oil production and their oil revenue, and every dollar we deny them means one less dollar to pay their fighters and to fund their terror. As I've said repeatedly, the only way to truly destroy ISIL is to end the Syrian civil war that ISIL has exploited. So we continue to work for a diplomatic end to this awful conflict. The cessation of hostilities in the Syrian civil war has largely held for about 6 weeks. It has reduced the violence, although not eliminated it. But that reduction is meaningful, and it's allowed some humanitarian aid to reach the Syrian people. So the cessation has saved lives, but as we're seeing around Aleppo and other areas, the cessation is tenuous and under strain. We've seen repeated violations by the Assad regime, continued attacks by al-Qaeda's al-Nusra affiliate, and many Syrians continue to be deprived of desperately needed food, water, and medicine. Talks are now resuming in Geneva, and the United States will continue to do everything that we can to help the cessation succeed and to advance a political solution to the Syrian civil war. And that includes a vision endorsed by the UN Security Council, including Russia, a process that brings all Syrians together under a transitional governing body, a new constitution, and free elections. The United States recognizes, as do people all across Syria, that such a process must include a transition away from Assad. And the future of Syria will be on the agenda when I meet with our Gulf Cooperation Council partners next week in Saudi Arabia. Beyond Syria and Iraq, we continue to go after ISIL wherever it tries to rear its ugly head. We're helping partners strengthen their security forces from Africa to Afghanistan. As we, our allies and partners, have made it harder for foreign terrorists to reach Syria and Iraq, we've seen an uptick in the number of ISIL fighters heading to Libya. So we're going to continue to use the full range of our tools to roll ISIL back from Libya while assisting the new and nascent Libyan government as it works to secure their country. I do want to point out that even as we work to destroy ISIL, we continue to go after the remnants of al-Qaeda that still pose a significant threat to U.S. interests, our allies, and the homeland. In Syria, we targeted a senior leader of al-Nusra, Abdul Faras al-Suri. In another strike in Syria, we took out 5 other al-Qaeda operatives. In Yemen, our recent strike against a training camp used by al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula took out dozens of terrorist fighters. In Somalia, we took out a senior leader of al-Shabaab, Hassan al-Dori, who was responsible for the attacks that killed innocent civilians, including Americans. So once again, we're sending a message. If you target Americans, you have no safe haven. We will find you. And finally, we will continue to work closely with our allies and partners, including in Europe, to stem the flow of foreign terrorist fighters and prevent attacks. I want to point out that our intelligence professionals and those of other nations have stopped numerous terrorist operatives in Syria and Iraq from entering Europe, thereby preventing attacks and gaining valuable intelligence. The world does not always hear about the success of our intelligence services, but it's a testament to the skills and tireless efforts of our intelligence professionals, and I want to make sure that the world does not forget it. Our team of experts, surge teams, recently returned from Brussels and Athens, and we're going to be sending teams to other countries so that we keep improving border security and screening of travelers and share more information. Because even the smallest gap, when critical information is not shared or when a potential terrorist slips through the cracks, can be deadly. And building on my invitation at our Nuclear Security Summit, we're going to continue to look for ways for intelligence services around the world to share more information against terrorist threats. So it's appropriate that we're here today. It gives me a chance to thank all the dedicated men and women across the CIA and our intelligence community, as well as every level of federal, state, and local government agencies who are involved in this effort. They are working around the clock to keep us safe. They don't get a lot of attention, but their work is tough, and it is critical, and I rely on it, and everybody up here relies on it in order to make informed decisions and to protect the American people. As the stars on the memorial wall here attest, many have given their lives so that we can live free. We're safer because of their patriotic service. And tomorrow, my National Security Advisor, Susan Rice, will address all the elements of our comprehensive strategy to destroy ISIL. That includes working with partners around the world to counter ISIL's hateful ideology, as well as protecting our homeland and working with communities here at home so that we stay resilient. In closing, I want to note that we're about to mark the 3 years since the bombing of the Boston Marathon. And once again, we'll remember the lives we lost and the survivors who continue to recover, to walk, and in many cases to run again. And I just want to remind the American people once again of what Boston taught us: how to be strong, how to be resilient. In the face of terrorists who try to spread panic, we have to refuse to give in to fear. We have to stay true to our values of liberty and diversity and openness. In the face of madmen who only know how to kill, we're going to keep on living our lives and trying to lift people up. We go to our stadiums, we cheer for our teams, we thrive in our cities, we run our races, as they will next week in Boston. In other words, we carry on. Terrorists like ISIL and al-Qaeda, they can't destroy a great nation like the United States of America. I spent time before I came here at a science fair at the White House. You want to get a sense of why I'm always confident about America. Meet some of those young people and what they're creating, what they're inventing, the diseases they're trying to cure, the energy they're trying to generate, the hope that they want to bring and the light they want to shine to the entire world. That's who we are. You can't beat that. Across more than 200 years, we've prevailed over much greater threats than the one we pose now. So we are focused, and we are going to win, in large part because of outstanding work of individuals who are here today. But we should be confident about how effective not only our military and our intelligence and our diplomatic teams are, but the basic character of the American people. As long as we hold to that, we're going to be just fine. Thank you very much, everybody. We have constructed a fairly rigid and vigorous set of criteria for us evaluating the intelligence that we receive about ISIL, where it might be operating, where al-Qaeda is operating. These guidelines involve a whole range of agencies consulting extensively and are then checked, double-checked, triple-checked before kinetic actions are taken. And for the most part, our actions are directed at high-value targets in the countries that you just described, outside of the theater of Iraq and Syria. In some cases, what we're seeing are camps that, after long periods of monitoring, becomes clear are involved in and directing plots that could do the United States harm, or are supporting ISIL activities or al-Qaeda activities elsewhere in the world. So if after a long period of observation we are seeing that, in fact, explosive materials are being loaded onto trucks and individuals are engaging in training in small arms, and there are some of those individuals who are identified as couriers for ISIL or al-Qaeda, then based on those evaluations, a strike will be taken. But what we have been very cautious about is making sure that we are not taking strikes in situations where, for example, we think there's the presence of women or children, or if it is in a normally populated area. And, you know, recently we laid out the criteria by which we're making these decisions. We declassified many elements of this. We are going to be putting forward and trying to institutionalize on a regular basis how we make these evaluations and these analyses. I think, in terms of the broader debate that's taken place, David, I think there's been, in the past, legitimate criticism that the architecture, the legal architecture around the use of drone strikes or other kinetic strikes wasn't as precise as it should have been, and there's no doubt that civilians were killed that shouldn't have been. I think that over the last several years, we have worked very hard to avoid and prevent those kinds of tragedies from taking place. In situations of war, we have to take responsibility when we're not acting appropriately, or where we've just made mistakes, even with the best of intentions. And that's what we're going to continue to try to do. And what I can say with great confidence is that our operating procedures are as rigorous as they have ever been, and that there is a constant evaluation of precisely what we do.